T1A is an intro to triangular trig functions. So we're going to kick it back to geometry for a little bit. And remember SOHCAHTOA. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. All right, and then remember that when you're looking at, as far as like whether the side is opposite or adjacent, it always depends on which angle we're talking about. And so usually they put this little theta, that's what that symbol is. Theta is a variable, so like it would be the same thing as saying like, sine of x. Okay, so like we could say this is sine of x equals opposite over hypotenuse. Theta is just the most commonly used symbol variable for an angle. All right, so now this is the part that you did not do in geometry. So we have these things called reciprocal identities, and this written out is cosecant, secant, and cotangent. And those things are the reciprocals of sine, cosine, and tangent that you learned in geometry. So what that means is cosecant, all right, that's the CSC one, is the opposite, it's the reciprocal of sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. All right, secant, S-E-C, that is the reciprocal of cosine, so it is hypotenuse over adjacent. And then cotangent, all right, is the reciprocal, that's abbreviated COT, is the reciprocal of tangent, so it is adjacent over opposite. Okay, so you need to know which of the original three trig functions these are the opposites of. Okay, so cosecant is the opposite or reciprocal of sine, secant is the reciprocal of cosine, and cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Okay, so as long as you know, if you know SOHCAHTOA, if you remember that from geometry, and you know which original trig function these reciprocal ones are the opposite of, you can just flip the fraction over and then you have your answer. Okay, so here's our triangle. My theta is down here, and the sides are 3, 4, 5. So if my theta is here, then opposite of that is 4. So 4 is the opposite side, which makes 3 the adjacent side, and 5 is the hypotenuse because it's opposite of the 90-degree angle. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, and for this triangle, that is 4 over 5. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and for this triangle, that is 3 over 5. Tangent would be opposite over adjacent, and for this triangle that is 4 over 3. Okay, then we have the reciprocal ones. So cotangent, remember, is the reciprocal of tangent. So I'm going to take this, or my 4 over 3, and I'm going to flip it over. All right, so cotangent is 3 over 4. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So instead of 3 over 5, it's going to be 5 over 3. Cosecant is a reciprocal of sine, so instead of 4 over 5, it is 5 over 4. All right, we're going to look at one more example to remind you about simplifying radicals. So here I have 2, 5, square root of 29. Okay, there's my theta, so that means 5 is the opposite side, 2 is the adjacent side, and the square root of 29 is the hypotenuse. So when I go to do sine, it's going to be opposite over hypotenuse, all right? And remember that you cannot have a square root in the denominator. So to rationalize or get rid of that square root, I'm going to multiply by it on the top and the bottom. All right, so on the top, I now have 5 square root 29, and on the bottom, the square root of 29 times the square root of 29 is just 29. So you have to rationalize all your denominators. You cannot have a square root on the bottom. Okay, so cosine would be 2 over square root 29, and I have to do the same thing there. So it would be 2 root 29 over 29. All right, I want you to pause here and come up with the answers for these 4 remaining ones, and then when you come back, you can check. Okay, so there's the answers for those remaining 4. All right, and that's it for our intro to triangular trig.